Shabbat Shalom. Our scripture reading for today is 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 15 and 16, and verses 18 and 19. He which hath called you is holy, so be you holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, Be you holy, for I am holy. For as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold, from your vain conversations received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of the Mashiach, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot.
Shabbat Shalom, family. Our selection today, Down in My Soul.
Down in my soul, cries. Oh, down in my soul, cries. Well, I'm singing down, my soul, down, sanctified soul, down in my soul,
down in my
oh, it cries. Children, down in my soul, cry. Oh, down in my soul, cry. Well, I'm singing down my soul, in my sanctified soul, down in my soul, cries holy. Come on and sing it with me, just like Yeshua. We got to be holy. Oh, just like Yeshua. We gotta be holy. Well, I'm singing just in a sanctified soul.
In my sanctified soul,
just like Yeshua, we gotta be holy. One more time, sing it just like Yeshua. We got to be holy. Oh, just like Yeshua, we gotta be holy. Sanctified soul, just like Yeshua. Whoa, we gotta be holy. Come on and hum it with me. Holy. Quiet down in my soul, rise. Oh, down in my soul, rise. Well, I'm singing down in my soul, in my sanctified soul, down in my soul. Whoa, it cries holy.
The oracles of the UCI, 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober and watch unto prayer. And above all things, have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man has received a gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which Elohim gives, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahshua the Messiah, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through chapter 5 and verse 4. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for Yahshua's sake has forgiven you. Be you therefore followers of Elohim as dear children, and walk in love, as the Messiah also have loved us, and has given himself for us an offering and sacrifice to Elohim for a sweet smelling savor. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becomes saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 through 2. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim, for Elohim is in heaven, and you upon earth. Therefore let your words be few. Exodus chapter 23, verses 20 and 21. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Revelation chapter 3 and verses 20 through 22. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I have also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches.
All right. Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right. As we're in the midst of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, I figured I'd continue down the path of unleavened bread. Just like we heard in the opening song, just like Yahshua, you got to be holy. In order to get there, we have to continue to purge that leaven out of us. It's going to be a continuous step, like Elder Priest mentioned in one of his earlier classes. That's a lifelong step. And sometimes it takes other people to show us the leaven that's within us. But when that is shown to us, can we accept it? Can we deal with it? Can we examine ourselves to say, you know what, yeah, this is a fault that I have. These little things keep us in good standings with the strangers and brothers and sisters alike. How do you want to be seen? Elder helps me a lot of times. Hey, Kish, you did this, you did that. Hey, it might not be joyous when it's brought to my attention, but it allows me to examine myself and say, hey, I don't want to offend my brother or my sister or even a stranger. Today's class is entitled Leaven versus Unleavened Israel. When you deal with leaven, it says, leavened breads are typically lighter and airier than unleavened breads. Leavened breads may also contain other ingredients such as milk or fat, which adds to the richness of the bread. Unleavened breads are typically denser and harder than leavened breads. So we want to become unleavened. That means you've got density in you. When you become dense, that means it's harder for things to penetrate. When you look at the unleavened bread, it has holes and pockets. What happens with those holes and pockets is that unrighteousness is allowed to fill in there. Any wind of doctrine is able to get in there. Come on, we eat peanut butter sandwiches. You know, peanut butter spreads and goes all into your normal leavened bread harder than it goes onto matzah. That's one of the reasons why we have to deal with getting this leaven out. When we get the leaven out and we can stand firmer in this word, in Yahweh's commandments, then it's not easy for us to be swayed with any wind of doctrine. Let's open today's class in Exodus chapter 12, and we're going to read verses 14 through 42. Exodus chapter 12, and we're going to start at verse 14.
Exodus chapter 12, verse 14. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses, for whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you.
You know, and sometimes we get to the point of, why do we keep going over these scriptures? Why do we keep going over the same thing over and over and over? So we can get it in our heads. Because I can even admit, coming up to the first day of unleavened bread, and you look and you say, okay, it's a Sabbath, right? And a lot of times when we think of just the Sabbath, we go, oh, okay, I can do work, but just as long as it's not work that I'm getting paid for, right? No servile work. But then when this was read recently in the week, I'm like, yeah, sit down and be still and do nothing. It says no manner of work. That's why we continue to go over these things. That way we can accept one day's difference from the other as far as what leeway you might have on one day versus the other. Go ahead.
Verse 17. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land.
So that's another thing. That's what I was saying in the opening. How we present ourselves is not just for brothers and sisters, but even how you present yourself before the stranger. That's why we have to deal with getting that leavening out of us. Go ahead.
Verse 20. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations you shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moshe called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel on the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For Yahweh will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood upon the lintel and on the 2 side posts, Yahweh will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And you shall observe this thing for an ordinance to you and to your sons forever. And it shall come to pass when you become to the land which Yahweh will give you, according as he has promised, that you shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, What mean you by this service? That you shall say, It is the sacrifice of Yahweh's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed their head and worshiped.
Now, if you're not keeping this practice, let's say you're even observing these days on your own, and you're leaving children behind, how do they get to ask you these questions? We're living in a society where there's a lot of broken homes. So your child might be living with the mother or vice versa, but you're the one walking the walk. So you decide not to bring them to the holy days, to the Sabbaths, then there's no reason for them to ever ask this question. We can make excuses of why they didn't come, but if you have the opportunity to bring them and you did not, that's on you. You're to blame. They will never be in a position to ask you that question. The more you bring them, the more they're seeing it, then eventually that question will be, Why do we do this? Go ahead.
Verse 28. And the children of Israel went away and did as Yahweh had commanded Moshe and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass that at midnight Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moshe and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up, and get you forth from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go, serve Yahweh, as you have said. Also take your flocks and your herds, as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We be all dead men. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moshe, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough, which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victual.
So you can see that there's always been a mixed multitude amongst the children of Israel. So what happens when the mixed multitude forget that they started out as a mixed multitude and then start saying, well, this is us. We're these people. Let's go back and look where we're coming from. Egypt. It's a part of Africa. But even before then, Yahweh put stipulations in not to mistreat the stranger. So, are the strangers able to grab hold to it? Yes. But what happens when the stranger forgot that he started out as a stranger? Go ahead.
You know, brother, it also shows the loving kindness and mercy of Yahweh, because Yahweh allowed the stranger to come up, and this is even before the law.
Mm-hmm.
The law has not been officially given. So even pre-law, Yahweh has already opened up his house. Of course, everything is more strict on Israel because it was given unto Israel. So we're going to have the harder judgment when it comes down to the word, all of those things. But Yahweh has always opened. This is one of the things that you begin to look at, the disparities, even when you look at what's in the land of Israel now. Even if people say, okay, this is those people,
Mm-hmm.
the opening of other nations is supposed to be there,
Right.
and it's not there. So it doesn't matter which way you look, you find a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because Israel was always supposed to allow the stranger an opportunity to serve Yahweh. And that's not happening in the land of Israel right
So
now.
how can you be a Yahweh-fearing person where he's got tolerance for the stranger, but yet you have intolerance for the stranger?
Right.
Then something's wrong with your heart.
There's something seriously strange. It's even more strange when you say that there are lost tribes, but we don't want to know where they are. That's like, I got a brother out there somewhere. I just don't want to know where he at. There's something strange about that you would say that my mother has brought forth a child, but I don't want to know where he is.
Unless you're worried about inheritance.
Right. See? Unless I really want to get my brother's house. I want my brother's land. I want everything to myself, and I don't want my brother to have any of it. Verse 40. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass that all the hosts of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto Yahweh for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. That is, that night of Yahweh to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And Yahweh said unto Moshe and to Aaron, This is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof.
So at this point, the stranger can still partake after he's been circumcised.
You got it.
Okay. That's all I wanted to do right there, my brother. Going back to verse 34, it says, and the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. Can you read that next line there for me, please, my brother?
From where?
Pick number 5.
Okay. The ancient Egyptians were the first to develop a method for leavening bread, using a starter made from flour and water that was allowed to ferment for several days. This starter was added to the dough, which caused it to rise and become light and fluffy.
So this particular thing was picked up in Egypt. What else was picked up in Egypt? What was Yahweh purging out of the children of Israel on their way out of Egypt? We look at this physical leaven. What other spiritual leaven was in them on their way out? Which we saw some of those things manifest out in the wilderness. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. So we get to being concerned about that physical leavening in our houses, but let's deal with the spiritual leavening. And that spiritual leavening is within our people. It's within us.
All right, brother. You said we're going to 1 Corinthians chapter 5, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's some leaven on this paper right here.
What happened?
Because the font that you use is so small. I'm gonna need you to use some bigger fonts. So let that be known. If your font is 12, it is 11. All right? You killing me over here.
Magnifying glass, please.
You know what I'm saying? All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1. It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. And you are puffed up, and have not rather mourned that he that has done this deed might be taken away from among you.
So, like has been stated, now you're upholding this wrong. Why would you be puffed up with somebody laying with their father's wife or their brother's wife? Why would you uphold that? It's only a matter of time before that person gonna want to sleep with your wife. You gonna uphold it then? Or you're gonna be upset, oh, it's wrong. Well, it was wrong when it was first done. But as long as you keep upholding it, it's gonna spread. There are certain things, and Michelle can remember, I was having a conversation with a brother last night, and Michelle said something that's like, no, I had to make a broad statement because there was many other people in the room who was dealing with that brother's circumstances, situation at that point in time. But it's like, I don't want everybody else to get it in their head that it's okay to just go ahead and do this. No, the brother ran into a situation. Let's not all now take liberty and think it's just okay to just haphazardly do this whenever necessary. So in this whole situation, as long as you're standing by and everybody's okay with it, eventually it's going to spread, and then it's going to spread to something else. And then it's going to deviate to something else. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
You know, part of that, we're okay with a lot of things because we're also considering what we may do down the line. So, and having persons an advantage because of who they may mean to us.
Right.
You know, I've seen some situations, especially in my natural family, where growing up, certain things were said that it was wrong, and that's what I took it.
Right.
My family raised me to say this is wrong. Then I watched one of my family do it, and nobody said anything. I went, whoa. You raised me and told me this was wrong. How is it okay when he did it?
It's wrong when you do it. It's okay when they do it.
No, it was wrong when anybody outside my family did it. When my family did it, it was okay. And now nobody in the family, will say anything. No. See, you should have taught me hypocrisy when you taught me. Because when you taught me that this was wrong, That was wrong. And it didn't matter who did it. It was wrong, and that was the way I was going to do it. So you can't come to me 20 years later, will say, well, now, you know, such and such is doing it. No. You told me a man that don't take care of his kids is worse than an infidel. That don't change because the person in my family.
Right.
You told me that a man that don't do this is a deadbeat man. That means that's a deadbeat right there. I don't care what they mean to you. And you can't unteach me. So when you taught me, you should have said, you know, they all deadbeats except your cousin. Except your cousin, not your cousin. Now, he's not really dead. That should have been in the lesson, but that wasn't in the lesson. And we don't consider, you know, what we're doing when you tell or teach that, and then all of a sudden it changes because it's somebody that you like.
We're going to get to that to show that we're still the same chips off the old block. Go ahead, my brother.
Verse 3. For I verily, as absent in body but present in spirit, have judged already as though I were present concerning him that has so done this deed. In the name of our Adonai Yahshua the Mashiach, when you are gathered together, and my spirit with the power of our Adonai Yahshua the Mashiach, to deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Adonai Yahshua.
But that's the whole thing. Like you were talking about, you don't want to confront that one because it's of your family. You don't want to put him out there so Satan can beat him up.
Right. But what are you doing though? You're allowing them to have that destruction at the end. If they get the destruction now, they may change their ways and not be destroyed at the end.
And it's also allowing other people in sight to become emboldened to do the same thing.
Of course it is. Verse 6. Your glorying is not good. Know you not that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Purge out therefore the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you are unleavened. For even the Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrifice for us.
Now, back to verse 6, it says, your glorying is not good. Know you not that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? I had a question asked to me. If you leave leaven out long enough and you just leave it alone, does it become unleavened? Okay, continue.
You know what? That's an interesting question, because you got to think about that in a certain sense. Think about how we do when somebody knows that they've done something wrong, and instead of acknowledging it with the individual, they wait. They don't do anything and act like the event hasn't happened. In our mind, the event has gone away. So that sounds absolutely ridiculous when you say it out loud. But when you think about what we do, tell me we don't do that. People know that they've done something against an individual, but they won't acknowledge it. And as long as, you know, they may be gone for 3, 4, 5 months, show back up. Hey, John, how you doing? And if that person doesn't go right back to 4 months ago, then we keep it going as if nothing happened. So tell me that ain't exactly what you just said. You left the leaven out long enough to act like it's become unleavened. Tell me that ain't it. Okay. Verse 8. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
Now, look at what he's touching. We're dealing with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? But we're dealing with natural, if you want to look at it. Some people just home in on sodium bicarbonate and this and that, ingredients in food, okay? But look at what he's saying. Therefore, let us keep the feast not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. That's no food ingredient. That's individual ingredients that we all have to be dealing with and trying to purge out of us. Go ahead.
So let me ask you a question then. So you telling me I can remove all the leaven from my house, but if I showed up to the feast with an issue with my brother, then I kept unleavened bread with the leaven of malice and wickedness?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just checking. Verse 9. I wrote unto you in an epistle not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must you needs go out of the world.
So we still dealing with unleavened bread. But he's going in deeper. We gone past the wickedness. We gone past the malice. Now he's dealing with fornicators. He's dealing with covetousness, extortioners, idolaters. That's all individual traits that we have to examine to deal with purging that leaven out of oneself, helping our brothers and sisters to see those faults. You know, Priest Esaac say it all the time. You know, Kish is confrontational. It's funny and I can accept that because I am. But there are certain situations where that confrontational characteristic can become leavened. So now I have to be mindful from situation to situation. Least I seem leavened in front of my brother or my sister or the stranger. Go ahead.
Verse 11. But now I have written unto you not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, with such an one know not to eat.
And we will look at all these heavier ones and give a blight to drunkard. Drunkard is in there with the extortioner, with the railer.
Mm-hmm.
Because you will be a drunkard and become a railer. You want to fight everybody. That's what railing is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not sugarcoat one over the other. Let's deal with them all on the same balance, same just weights. Go ahead.
You know, something else is interesting, brother. You know, all of these things that he's writing against, you know, a lot of times, you know, people, we were all, you know, heard that thing, you know, the law is nailed to the cross. All of this is just, I mean, it's rife with law. Mm-hmm. All of this is law that he keeps talking about. Mm-hmm. And you know, when people say, you know, the law was nailed to the cross, they don't understand that he was dealing with sacrificial law, not moral or dietary law. This is all law that he keeps talking about. Covetousness, fornication, idolatry. That's the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
It is utterly amazing that we allowed somebody to tell us that the law was nailed to the cross. And the law is in the New Testament thick. It just don't say law right in front of it.
Right. But this is also after the law was nailed to the cross that he's talking about.
Exactly. So if it's nailed to the cross, you know, why is he even talking about it? Verse 12. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not you judge them that are within? But them that are without, Elohim judges. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person.
All right. The Romans also developed a method for leavening bread using yeast. This yeast was extracted from beer and added to the dough, which resulted in a light and airy bread. So everybody's got their own methods and their own ways of dealing with this leaven. Let's go to Galatians chapter 5.
I must say, my brother, you have thoroughly used this book over here. Because these tabs are horrible. I should have got my book.
You want to switch?
Yeah, but yeah, it would be. Let me get mine. I'm sitting here fighting with another man's sword, and I need my own sword. There you go. Thank you, baby. I miss you. There you go. There is. Yes. Okay. All right, Galatians chapter 5, and let's start that at verse 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith the Mashiach hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Behold, I Saul say unto you, that if you be circumcised, the Mashiach shall profit you nothing. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised that he is a debtor to do the whole law. The Mashiach is become of no effect unto you. Whosoever you are, justified by the law, you are fallen from grace. For we through the Spirit wait for the hope of righteousness by faith. For in Yahshua the Mashiach neither circumcision availeth anything, nor uncircumcision, but faith which worketh by love. You did run well. Who did hinder you, that you should not obey the truth? This persuasion comes not of him that calleth you. A little leaven leavens the whole lump.
So, verse 7, you did run well. You were doing good. You were on track. Who did hinder you that you should not obey the truth? What got in the way? Right back to that light bread versus that dense bread. When it's dense, it's harder to penetrate. But you don't want to be so dense that the word can't penetrate you. You can be dense in the wrong way and you can be dense in the right way. You want to be dense to where you can firmly stand on this word and any wind of doctrine doesn't sway you. So that's the question. Who got in the way? What did you hear that hindered your walk? You weren't even walking, you were running. But you let something get in the way of that run. Go ahead.
Verse 10. I have confidence in you through the Adonai, that you will be none otherwise minded, but he that troubles you shall bear his judgment, whosoever he be. And I, brethren, if I yet preach circumcision, why do I yet suffer persecution? Then is the offense of the cross cease. I would they were even cut off which trouble you. For brethren, you have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another.
And that's what I was saying earlier. We got to be able to look at certain things. I said something in a situation for this one brother, but there's other people in earshot. I don't want you to take the liberty of what was just told to this man upon yourself and think it's okay. Because you might not have a full understanding of that person's circumstances and situation, why it was said, okay, you can go ahead and do this at this time. Go ahead.
Verse 14. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, take heed that you be not consumed one of another. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that you would. But if you be led of the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies.
Now, how often do we hear that one come up? Hatred. Hatred. What you hate your brother or your sister or the stranger for? Examine yourself. It's leaven. You got people that hate people just because they're in a position that they're not in. Is it valid? Is it warranted? That's why I said we all have a job to help one another. You might see something in me that I don't see. That's your job to help me discover that. And then it's up to me whether I purge that leaven out of me. A lot of people like to run. Somebody say something, they run. You're not helping yourself. I've had some heart-to-heart conversations with brothers and sisters. On both ends. I might be on the receiving end. And I might be on the giving end. But I'm open. And sometimes I'm on both ends. Because sometimes when you're giving, you might say something and you're thinking about it and you're like, oh, damn, I'm cutting myself too. Go ahead.
Verse 21. Envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, Of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim.
So just from envying, it can cause you not to inherit the kingdom of Elohim. I've heard people say, man, you know, you got a family, you got kids, and I don't have this. Be careful how you're saying that, because it sounds like envying. Why won't you be happy with what Yahweh has given to you at the point in time that you're at? Maybe he knows that you're not ready for what someone else has. But you sit there focusing and envying so much, you're losing your keys to the kingdom. Go ahead.
You know, it's interesting that envying, even as you look at it, all of the stuff that comes behind verse 21, envying, murders, drunkenness, revelings. Normally, it's the envying that brings forth the drunkenness, which then brings the revelings and the murders. So one thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. So we can drink ourselves right out the kingdom. Verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law.
In verse 22 it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, and faith. It takes a mindset to get there. We all were raised in a mindset of thinking that having money, having a good job is what would lead to these things. Take a look in your media and see how many of these so-called rich people who have all these things but yet not have none of this. Why? Because they didn't figure out there's a balance. But within your spirit, there has to be a richness in order to even get that balance. Our mind is constantly running. So if your mind is constantly running, there's no peace. You're constantly worrying about the bills. You're constantly worrying about making more money, having more things. So there's no peace within you. Fighting to have this type of a balance of joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, and faith, meekness, temperance is a balance. But every individual is going to have to figure out where that balance is for oneself. My balance is not going to be the same as your balance. Yours is not going to be the same as mine. But if you think that money is going to bring you happiness, once you get all the money, you're going to find out that you might be all alone. Was it worth it? But it first has to begin with a mindset. When I was younger and I was trying to get into the Marine Corps, my older brother's been in there for years. He looked at me and said, man, look, you have to realize one thing. It's mind games. Once you get it through your head that it's all mind games, you'll be okay. But there's a lot of people who go into these armed forces never being warned that it's mind games. So when they encounter these things, I've known of a guy who broke his leg just to get out. They're going to let you out, but they're going to charge you for destruction of government property first, and they're going to punish you for a while. These people are running up in your face and barking all kinds of craziness at you. If you don't have that foreknowledge that this is all mind games, you're doing stupid stuff. All of this begins within our spirit. We all have to figure out what type of individual we are, and then start working on those things slowly. Why does this get to me so quickly? Why do I react this way to that thing versus how I react to this over here? Or to this individual versus that individual? ahead and read, Elder Priest.
Verse 24. And they that are the Mashiachs have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vain glory, provoking one another, envying one another.
All right. Let's go to Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16, and we're going to read verses 1 through 12.
Matthew chapter 16, verse 1. The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came and tempting desired him that he would show them a sign from heaven. He answered and said unto them, when it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O you hypocrites! You can discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. And he left them and departed. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Then Yeshua said unto them, take heed, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have taken no bread. Which when Yeshua perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason you among yourselves, because you have brought no bread? Do you not yet understand, neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000, and how many baskets you took up? Neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000, and how many baskets you took up? How is it that you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that you should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees? Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees.
So that is the whole point of what we're dealing with. Let's stop looking at the leaven of bread purging out of our houses and these other spiritual leaven purging out of our spiritual house. We have to deal with both. We can't put more importance on one than the other. Actually, you have to put more importance on the leaven of the Spirit than on the leaven in your house.
Mm-hmm.
This house is what's going to get you in the kingdom. That house is going to end up on the water. That's what we need to search ourselves for. And like Elder Priest was talking about earlier, when he was saying the things in his house, like, you can't do this, but it's okay to do it. But in this family, that's what he was talking about. We the chips off the block. The leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Do as I say, but don't do as I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Luke chapter 11.
You know, that's exactly what he said about the Pharisees. He said the Pharisees say, but they do not.
Mm-hmm.
They can teach you everything in the law. And then you watch them, and they're not doing any of those things that they just got through teaching. He said it's leaven in their doctrine.
They meant for you to do it, not for them.
Right.
Luke chapter 11, and we're going to read verses 37 through chapter 12 and verse 3.
Luke chapter 11 and verse 37. And as he spake, a certain Pharisee besought him to dine with him. And he went in and sat down to meat. And when the Pharisee saw it, he marveled that he had not first washed before dinner. And the Adonai said unto him, now do you Pharisees make clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but your inward part is full of ravening and wickedness. You fools, did not he that made that which is without make that which is within also? But rather give alms of such things as you have, and behold, all things are clean unto you. But woe unto you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and all manner of herbs, and pass over judgment and the love of Elohim. These ought you to have done, and not to leave the other undone.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned Passover, right? You had people show up for their appearance. But you done passed over the Passover. So one day is more important to you than the other? It's basically what he's talking about here. You passing over this one, putting more importance on this thing to deal with this thing. So you think tithing is more important than this over here. You think your appearance is more important than Passover and the first day of unleavened bread. I can see if you had to travel to come here for those things, understandable. But if you're right around town and right about town, believe me, all the brothers and sisters are watching and we see where your importance lies. Go ahead.
You know, brother, you have to look at why you can see what helps people get to that hypocrisy part. Tithing was very important to the Pharisees. It wasn't just that they tithe; they also received tithe. So you see, when people are getting something, then here lies their importance.
Right.
See, because they're getting some out of it. So then when you look at the inner makeup of our families, why is it okay for this individual to do something? Well, because they got something else I like. I want to make sure I see all my other little babies and everything, and I want to do this. Oh, okay. So we're gonna slide by this so that you can get something else. This is what hypocrisy is born out of. So whenever you're in a situation, you need to look at what are you getting out of it. That might help you reframe your position.
Right.
See, because it is that something that they're getting out of this while they are pushing tithing. They don't get anything about you being righteous. They don't get anything about you dealing with judgment correctly. But they do get something out of you tithing. They got the best donkey in town. Right. Verse 43. Woe unto you, Pharisees, for you love the uppermost seats in the synagogues and greetings in the markets. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are as graves which appear not, and the men that walk over them are not aware of them.
Now, I just said it. We're the chips off of this same old block. Woe unto you, Pharisees, for you love the uppermost seats in the synagogues and greetings in the markets. Hey, man, some people you don't see them till they get a new ride. And where they parking? Right up front. Right up front. The uppermost seat.
Early.
Right,
So you get the premium spot.
Right. I got to be seen.
Right. You ain't going to see them if they park in the back.
Go ahead.
Verse 45. Then answered one of the lawyers and said unto him, Master, thus saying, you reproachest us also. And he said, Woe unto you also, you lawyers, for you laid men with burdens grievous to be borne, and you yourselves touch not the burdens with one of your fingers.
Now, this is interesting. This is what I was talking about in earshot earlier, right? He's talking to the Pharisees, right? But look who jumped out. Then answered one of the lawyers and said unto him, Master, thus saying, you reproach us also. This sword is supposed to cut every direction. I'm glad you got cut. But since you want to jump out there and let it be known, let me deal with you in front of everybody. Go ahead.
Verse 47. Woe unto you, for you build the sepulchres of the prophets, and your fathers killed them. Truly you bear witness that you allow the deeds of your fathers, for they indeed killed them, and you build their sepulchres. Therefore also said the wisdom of Elohim, I will send them prophets and apostles, and some of them they shall slay and persecute, that the blood of all the prophets, which was said from the foundation of the world, may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, which perished between the altar and the temple. Verily I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. Woe unto you, lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. You entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering in you hindered. And as he said these things unto them, the scribes and the Pharisees began to urge him vehemently, and to provoke him to speak of many things, laying wait for him, and seeking to catch something out of his mouth, that they might accuse him.
Continue.
In the meantime, When there were gathered together an innumerable multitude of people, insomuch that they trode one upon another, he began to say unto his disciples, first of all, beware you of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, nothing hid that shall not be known. Therefore, whatsoever you have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light. And that which you have spoken in the ear in closets shall be proclaimed upon the housetops.
All right. So be careful of them little secret meetings that you have, calling a brother one side or a sister one side because you've got some envying or you got some indignation. Don't be mad when that person comes out and shed it to light, because that's not the way that situation should have happened. You should have went to that individual and talked with that individual.
Yep.
So then it says something about you, not the person that let it out the closet. Let's go to Luke chapter 13.
Luke chapter 13, and we're going to start at verse 10. And he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And behold, there was a woman which had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bowed together, and could in no wise lift up herself. And when Yeshua saw her, he called her to him, and said unto him, Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight and glorified Elohim. And the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation, because that Yeshua had healed on the Sabbath day, and said unto the people, There are 6 days in which men ought to work. In them therefore come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day. That they then answered him and said, You hypocrite, do not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or his ass from the stall and lead him away to watering?
Now, because we're not into farming, we don't understand these things. Anybody in this room who's got a pet, do you ignore your pet on the Sabbath day? Do you leave it in bondage? Is basically what he's saying. Okay, so this lady's in bondage. Why would you not want me to have her loose from this bondage? It's hypocrisy. But how you see how we can look at one situation and not apply it to the other side? And that's what Yeshua keeps doing. That's what we have to learn to do. It took me reading it and saying, wow. Yeah, because when the ox is in the stall, because we don't farm, we don't think about these things. The food is not in the same place where the stall is at. The water is not in the same place that the stall is at. You really think you're going to be justified by saying, hey, I kept the Sabbath day and I let this animal starve? Go ahead.
You know, the Sabbath won't be very peaceful for that animal. But it says that your Sabbath is supposed to be peace not only to you, but unto even your servants. So, you know, we have, you know, businesses, and then we keep the Sabbath, but then tell them people they got to work. Something wrong with you. Your Sabbath is supposed to be a Sabbath for everybody. They're supposed to rejoice on your Sabbath, including your animal.
Amen.
How peaceful can your animal be if he can't hear his bark because he's hungry? His stomach louder than his bark.
I mean, you have to think about it. Like it's stated before, how did we get the enjoyment of Christmas? This was not a tradition that we had being brought here. But we learned that it was a peaceful time for the slave masters.
You got that right.
So then we began to start looking and reverencing this day. Wow, they're leaving us alone. They're not laying us with heavy burdens. They're enjoying themselves. They're joyous. We have some peace. That's how we start having an affinity for Christmas and Thanksgiving and all these other things. They're giving us days off. That was not a part of our culture. But we grew to like it because they left us the hell alone. And we look forward to it. Go ahead.
Verse 16. And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound, lo, these 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? And when he had said these things, all his adversaries were ashamed. And all the people rejoiced for all the glorious things which were done by him. Then said he, Unto what is the kingdom of Elohim like? And whereunto shall I resemble it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and cast into his garden. And it grew and waxed a great tree. And the fowls of the air lodged in the branches of it. And again he said, Whereunto shall I liken the kingdom of Elohim? It is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leavened.
That's all it takes for it to become leaven. Just 3 measures of meal. It doesn't take a lot for us to be walking around with leaven in us. But then what it says, just a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Let's go to Numbers chapter 12. Let's look at some situations that we don't realize is leaven. Numbers chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 1.
Numbers chapter 12 and verse 1. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moshe because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married.
Now, I wonder how long was this leaven in there? How long this was building up? How long was this indignation there? Because Moshe's been around with them for a minute now.
Uh-huh.
This is not just them meeting. Yes, we knew he was raised in Pharaoh's house. But he's done, at this point, he's led them out of Egypt and into the wilderness. So they're with him day in and day out. How long has this been puffing up? You know, if you puff something up too much, eventually it explodes, right? Even with baking cakes, you know there's a limit to how much leaven you put in that cake. Because that cake will go in the oven and just explode. This is them exploding from the leaven they've been carrying around. And the interesting thing is, it says Miriam and Aaron. So it makes me wonder, who pushed this?
Mm-hmm.
And as we go through the story, you can see who Yahweh holds more accountable, one over the other. Go ahead.
Verse 2. And they said, Has Yahweh indeed spoken only by Moshe? Has he not spoken also by us? And Yahweh heard it. Now the man Moshe was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And Yahweh spake suddenly unto Moshe, and unto Aaron, and unto Miriam, Come out, you 3, unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And they 3 came out. And Yahweh came down in the pillar of the cloud, and stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I Yahweh will make myself known. Excuse me. I Yahweh will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moshe is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yahweh shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe? And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against him, and he departed.
So that puffed up. They got so puffed up, the fear was gone. That leaven kept rising. Till eventually it just exploded. Yahweh asking, hey, why weren't you afraid? But we find that people go off of how they think, how they feel, and how they believe. Why didn't anybody address that situation with Moshe? Why didn't anybody have some understanding of Moshe's walk? Miriam, of all people, knew what Moshe went through. You helped to give him into the hand of Pharaoh's daughter. So you know he wasn't raised with you. You know his situation and circumstances. You can tell him stuff about the day when he was found, and he wouldn't know any of that stuff. You know. You would have to be the one to say, nah, you were in the water in some bulrushes and she found you. Oh, that's what happened? So where is your compassion? Or maybe you upset because of his upbringing versus yours. Who's to say? But whatever it is, eventually got puffed up and exploded. Go ahead.
You know, brother, one other thing that we have to look at, man, when we consider the life of Moshe, his entire life was around foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
Being in the house of Pharaoh, he was raised among them and had to even look at his people from afar. He couldn't really deal with them like that. Then, him being enveloped in emotion and making a move, had to then run after he committed that deed against the Egyptian, and then had to go live among another group of foreigners. Then he comes in, and they then have an issue with him marrying a foreign woman. Now, the interesting part about it, this is not the woman whom they had before, because he lived amongst the Midianites. They wasn't angry about the Midianite woman. They were angry about the Egyptian woman. So now we got to break down why they met. It wasn't just about it was a foreign woman. It was a particular foreign woman.
Right.
No, the Egyptians have ruled over them with rigor. They have a problem with her.
You know what's interesting though? Nowhere here it doesn't say that she wasn't walking the walk.
No.
So
and
once again,
we don't even know what the if this was a woman that he ran away from 40 years ago when he ran out. We don't even consider that.
If she is there in the midst of them, a stranger, hey, we hear nothing about any wrongdoings by this individual.
Nope.
From the front of this book to the back of this book, I hear no wrongdoings about the Ethiopian woman. So she must have picked up the culture and walked in the culture.
See, a lot of the things what we don't look at is what all Egypt encompass.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see Ethiopian, we don't understand that that's part of that rulership of Mizraim, of Egypt. See, when we don't consider that, we don't understand that, no, this is one of those ruling figures at that time. So they have indignation about that. Verse 10, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous.
So I asked the question again, who is the ringleader? Do you all hear any? Let's continue to read.
And Aaron said unto Moshe, alas, my Adonai, I beseech you, lay not the sin upon us, where we have done foolishly, wherein we have sinned.
So Aaron is saying unto Moshe, alas, my master, I beseech you, lay not this sin upon us.
Uh-huh.
But who turned leprous?
Right.
Okay.
And it says wherein we have sinned. We have done foolishly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that was us today, even when we said something, we would have said her. Don't lay her sin upon her what she has done foolishly, and you have done this thing to she, not me or we. There would not have been any situation whereby we would have taken accountability. He is at least taking accountability
As being part of it.
As being part of it. He says we. He does not just say she. Verse 12. Let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb. And Moshe cried unto Yahweh, saying, heal her now, O Elohim, I beseech you. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that, let her be received in again.
Now, we've covered this before. Aaron is gone to Moshe, right? Moshe then done pleads to Yahweh. How many of us have done our brothers or sisters or the strangers wrong and have not gone to them and made it right, but still are praying? Your prayer may not be heard unless that person prays for you. Hey, a lot of us might just be praying in vain because we haven't corrected that thing with that individual. Go ahead.
Verse 15. And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days. And the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. And after the people removed from Hazeroth and pitched in the wilderness of Paran.
All right, let's go to Numbers chapter 12. So that was Numbers chapter 12. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 12.
You know, brother, looking at that, it also shows that when Yahweh is dealing with somebody, even when it's somebody that you love and care about, you better learn to step out of his way.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as he loved Moshe, he was not going to allow Miriam to go unpunished. Not at all.
Yep.
You can talk to me all you want. Matter of fact, if Moshe kept standing or in that point where Yahweh was like, oh, no, I'm going to deal with her, he would have found himself getting dealt with just so he would get out of Yahweh's way. And that's something that we have to understand. There are times when we want to help people because we may have the resources to help an individual and we say, I'm going to help this person. But Yahweh is trying to make that person grow or learn something. You're going to find all your money going to start disappearing in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you in his business.
You know, it also goes back to these parents who decide that, well, I'm not going to chastise my child, or I'm not going to spank my child. Imagine if all Yahweh did was just talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all think that would have changed her position and how she felt and dealt with the situation? No, Yahweh said there must be some type of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
This is a grown individual.
Mm-hmm.
And Yahweh said, no, there's going to be some punishment. And what was that? Just the words out of her mouth. But we think it's okay not to chastise our children. Okay. Let's see the end of that child then.
Well, then you're making it bad for everybody else. If Miriam wasn't disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
then other individuals are going to pick up the same thing. So then if we take that down to our kids, if the kids are not disciplined, then the one unruly kid is then spoiling the other kids who are being disciplined at home. Because then they say, well, wait a minute. I know you said throwing a tantrum was wrong. But I just saw Susie Q throw a whole apple and hit her mama in the head, and nobody said a thing. So now you think what your kid is looking at you and looking at the apple. And the kid looking at you and looking at the apple. And if you look, you can see it in his eye. Try it if you want to. Try it, but you gotta look deep in that kid's eye, make sure they feel you. Try it if you want to be the last thing you throw. But why are they thinking about it? Because they saw this other kid do it. How many times we go to school, we see something, and you come home, and you try it on your mama, and you have to go to the hospital. Right. Well, you learned that day, didn't you? You learned that what's at school, you don't try that at the house. You learned that, right? Okay. Well, same thing here. You might have to show your kid something because the kid done saw something else, and you going to have to show your kid. Don't you ever try that in here? I'm sorry, brother. What was that?
2 Samuel chapter 12. We're going to read verses 1 through 14.
All right. Verse 1. And Yahweh sent Nathan unto Dawid, and he came unto him and said unto him, there were 2 men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up. And it grew up together with him and with his children. It did eat of his own meat and drank of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And Dawid's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as Yahweh lives, the man that has done this thing shall surely die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said unto Dawid, you are the man. Thus says Yahweh Elohim of Israel, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you out of the hand of Saul. And I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your bosom, and gave you the house of Israel and of Yehudah. And if that had been too little, I would have moreover have given unto you such and such things. Wherefore have you despised the commandment of Yahweh to do evil in his sight? You have killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and has taken his wife to be your wife, and have slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says Yahweh, behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes, and give them unto your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. And Dawid said unto Nathan, I have sinned against Yahweh. And Nathan said unto Dawid, Yahweh also hath put away your sin. You shall not die.
So this is the leaven of covetousness that led to murder. But can we accept it when someone is brought to us to show us the leaven that's in us? When it was explained, Dawid said, I've sinned. End of story. No, this is why, because I've sinned. I've sinned against Yahweh. And dealt with his situation. That's what we're here for. We should be able to accept one another coming and saying, hey, this is an attribute. This is a fault. This is a little bit of leavening. And deal with it. The more this is why, because, the longer it's going to take you to get rid of that leavening. Dawid said, I've sinned. But before, he was puffed up when he thought it was somebody else. Barking out judgments when he thought it was somebody else. And we all can be that way when we think somebody else has done wrong. Ready to jump off the top rope. But do we look at ourselves and can accept when we have done wrong? That's the bigger part of this walk of leaven versus unleavened. You look at Dawid, he said, Dawid is a man after my own heart. So guess what? He's a very unleavened man. We all are capable of having that little bit of leaven in us that can destroy us. Let's go to Habakkuk chapter 2.
Did you want to finish that verse 14?
All right, go ahead.
Verse 14. Howbeit, because by this deed you have given great occasion to the enemies of Yahweh to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto you shall surely die.
And that's what we got to watch out for. How much of that leavening do we allow to come out of us for somebody else to get emboldened to do something and blaspheme the name of Yahweh because of our actions? Some liberties that you know you have in this word, you can't do around some people. And that includes people in this walk. Habakkuk chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 2 through 5.
Habakkuk chapter 2 and verses 2 through 5. You know, brother, when you look into that as well, we have to consider how Dawid got into that. He saw something that he should not have seen.
Yep.
And, you know, we are like exceptionally nosy, right? I mean, we are like Pinocchio nosy. I mean, it just grows and we want to have like this knowledge of every situation. And then you get that and now it starts to affect your decision making when you should have went and sat down somewhere. But once he had this eye gate, things go in through the eyes, through the ears,
Penetrate the soul.
and once it got into his soul, he could not let it go. And it wasn't like it was originally his desire to go after this. He saw something that he should not have seen. And then people wonder why we are so strict about our dress code. You got people who would get offended if I go to them and I say, this ain't right. You need to be covered more here. Hey, brother, was you trying to put on a muscle shirt? What you doing? Then people get offended. But wait a minute. How did Dawid end up in this situation? He saw something that he should not have seen. And that one thing led to covetousness, fornication, adultery, and murder. One thing. So you have to consider that when you let people come out of your house. That one thing that you think is okay. All right. So when you back it up and hit it in reverse and it leads to fornication, adultery, and murder, are you going to take that? You going to wear that? Because Yahweh sure going to come and talk to the man. Hey, man, wasn't this your house? Didn't it come out of your house? Well, come here, let's have a talk. See, this man saw something that he wasn't supposed to see because he was in a position to see it. What's our excuse when we let somebody walk out of the house with all their jubilation showing?
I like you say our excuse because that goes for the Ishas too. You see your husband going out, hey, honey.
Oh, all the way.
You are dashing, but that's mine covered up.
I got told the other day, where you going with those pants? No, you are not. No, you absolutely are not. Turn the other way. Don't sit like that. Right. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. And Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak, and not lie, though it tarry. Wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry.
Now, Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision, but he said, make it plain. Where we get all these doctrines where people come from with an equation? Yahweh doesn't complicate anything. Even with this. If this was a complicated man, he said, make it plain. I need them to see it, get it, run when they see it. You got this whole 0 days here, and you don't count this day and that day, and the man said, make it plain. This book, the more you walk in this culture, becomes plain and simple. The understanding is plain and simple. We complicate things. And why do we complicate things? Wanting to have our own way. Go ahead.
Verse 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not right in him, but the just shall live by his faith.
So when your soul is lifted up, do we understand that that's leaven? You're puffed up. When your soul is lifted up in you, in him. So that means we have to be mindful of ourselves. Lest we get too haughty. Lest we get too puffed up. That is leavening. Go ahead.
Verse 5. Yea, also, because he transgresses by wine, he is a proud man, neither keeps at home.
Wine is leading to this. Wine. He's transgressing by wine. Know your limits. I mean, we keep having to change things because people don't understand where they're at. Why we got to say, hey, if one of them sisters aren't at the cart, don't touch the wine. You're being led of your own lust. It's lust. Can you not look at the bottle and the bottle don't pull you in? But then again, eventually, you transgressing because of the wine. And you become proud. I ain't drunk. That's pride.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this. I can do that. See, I'm not drunk. I'm standing here on one foot. Hey, man, I've learned one thing. To me, that's the first sign of being drunk, when you tell me you ain't drunk. So go tell that to somebody else. Go ahead.
Neither keepeth at home, who enlarges his desire as hell and as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathers unto him all nations and heaps unto him all people.
All right. Today, most breads are made with commercial yeast, which is a strain of Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is increasingly being promoted as a nutritional supplement by health food enthusiasts and is also recommended as prophylaxis against antibiotic-associated diarrhea. However, severe opportunistic infection due to S. cerevisiae have been reported in patients with chronic disease, cancer, and immunosuppression, fungema, endocarditis, pneumonia, peritonitis, urinary tract infections, skin infections, esophagitis have been described. So all of this is coming from yeast.
Exodus chapter 12 and verse 15. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation. And in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until 1 and 20th day of the month at even. 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eats that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall you eat unleavened bread.
So earlier we read that this whole thing of leavening we picked up in Egypt. Then Yahweh gives us this day fasting from leaven for 7 days. Do we understand in this day and time how that is aiding our body? What is the benefit of bread without yeast? Because there's no yeast, you avoid the sugar issues. Furthermore, you can eat yeast-free bread and not suffer the side effects of candida. Some of the effects of candida include thrush, yeast infection, breakouts on the skin, fatigue. How many of us run around trying to take vitamins and minerals and this and not understanding why we tired? But yet we're still ingesting yeast-filled bread. That alone, fatigue, and cloudy thinking, all of which can be quite serious. Let's go to Psalms chapter 32. You know, I thought it strange when I see some of the sisters around here. Nope, I don't want any bread. I don't want any bread. Huh? What? What's wrong with bread? Yahweh gives us this 7 days to purge our homes of leaven. And we're just focused on purging our homes of leaven, but not realizing He's actually helping our bodies to get rid of some stuff.
Psalms chapter 32 and verse 1. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man unto whom unto whom Yahweh imputes not lawlessness, and in whose spirit there is no guile. When I kept silence, my bone waxed old through my roaring all the day long. For day and night thy hand was heavy upon me. My moisture is turned into the drought of summer. I acknowledge my sin unto you, and mine lawlessness have I not hid. I said I will confess my transgressions unto Yahweh, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. For this shall everyone that is godly pray unto you in a time when you mayeth be found. Surely in the floods of great waters they shall not come near unto him. You are my hiding place. You shall preserve me from trouble. You shall compass me about with songs of deliverance. I will instruct you and teach you in the way which you shall go. I will guide you with mine eye. Be you not as the horse or as the mule, which have no understanding, whose mouth must be held in with bit and bridle, lest they come near unto you.
Now, look at the picture. Do we understand where the bridle is? It's over his tongue. Do you understand if your tongue is being held down, you can't talk? You can't have a conversation if something is restricting your tongue from moving? Because sometimes the leaven that comes out is coming out of our mouth. Go ahead.
Verse 10. Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he that trusts in Yahweh, mercy shall compass him about. Be glad in Yahweh and rejoice, you righteous, and shout for joy, all you that are upright in heart.
All right, I know it's going to be a stretch over there, but can you read the definition for guile there? You need a magnifying glass?
Guile, H4820, H meaning Hebrew, and that is mirma, from H7411, in the sense of deceiving, fraud, craft, deceit, deceitful, deceitfully, false, feigned, guile, subtly, treachery.
So guile is also leaven. See what all is encompassed in this one little thing, this little one word of guile? Let's go to Yohanan chapter 1. That's John chapter 1. And we're going to read verses 43 through 51. John chapter 1, and we're going to do verses 43 through 51.
John chapter 1 and verse 43. The day following, Yahshua would go forth into Galilee, and finds Philip, and says unto him, Follow me. Now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip finds Nathanael, and says unto him, We have found him, of whom Moshe in the law and the prophets did write, Yahshua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael said unto him, Can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip said unto him, Come and see. Yahshua saw Nathanael coming to him, and says of him, Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile.
That's what we want to strive for somebody to be able to say that about us. That takes purging the leaven out of us. To where somebody can say, Here's an Israelite in whom there's no guile. But it's going to take the rest of our life to struggle to get that title, to get that recognition. And it's going to be harder to get that from those that know us. Here's a bar to set. Here's a target to try to aim to reach for. And what does that mean? Dealing with our spirit and how we deal and see one another, and even how we see ourselves. And being able to accept how others see us and make those necessary changes to be righteous servants. There's an Israelite in whom there's no guile. Go ahead.
Verse 48. Nathanael says unto him, Whence knoweth you me? Yeshua answered and said unto him, Before that Philip called you, when you was under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered and said unto him, Rabbi, you are the son of Elohim. You are the king of Israel. Yeshua answered and said unto him, Because I said unto you, I saw you under the fig tree, believe you? You shall see greater things than these. And he said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter you shall see heaven open, and the angels of Elohim ascending and descending upon the Son of Man.
All right, let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2. First Peter chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 1.
1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1. Wherefore, laying aside all malice and all guile, and hypocrisies, and envies, and all evil speakings, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that you may grow thereby.
So, here's the formula. If we don't understand what it means to end up being an Israelite indeed, in whom there's no guile, these are the things we got to work on. Laying aside all malice, and all guile, and hypocrisies, and envies, and all evil speakings. Go ahead.
Verse 3. If so be you have tasted that the Adonai is gracious, to whom coming, as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of Elohim and precious. You also as lively stones are built up a spiritual house, and holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim by Yeshua the Mashiach.
So, you also as lively stones are built up a spiritual house. Okay? But we got to get the leaven out of the spiritual house. And holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to Elohim by Yeshua HaMashiach. But first, we got to deal with the first part, laying aside all malice and all guile and hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings. Go ahead.
Verse 6. Wherefore also it is contained in the scripture, Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believes on him shall not be confounded. Unto you therefore which believe he is precious, but unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense, even to them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, whereunto also they were appointed. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who have called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, which in times past were not a people, but are now the people of Elohim, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify Elohim in the day of visitation.
So behold means they looking at it. Not the words coming out of your mouth, but what they're looking at, what they see before them, how you present yourself. are we trying to be those examples? Go ahead.
You know, brother, a key point here to point out in verse 12, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles. That is when we are around not us. That is, how do you act when you are around other individuals? How do the other nations see you? So the other nations need to be able to see you as a people striving for righteousness. See, a lot of things we do just among your brethren. Yeah, but how does a stranger look at you? How do you treat them?
That also goes to show that respective persons where your fringes at. Oh, I have to wear fringes in order for you to treat me a certain type of way? That's hypocrisy.
Yep. Verse 13. Submit yourself to every ordinance of man for the Adonai's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of Elohim, that with well-doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free, and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of Elohim. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear Elohim, honor the king.
Honor all men. Honor all men.
Just the ones I like, right?
All men.
Just the ones who kick it with me.
It says honor all men.
The ones that live in my neighborhood?
No, all men. I don't care what walk of life, where they come from.
Oh, okay.
That's according to Scripture, not according to me. But then love the brotherhood. But it first says honor all men. But see, what we do is love the brotherhood. If you ain't a part of the brotherhood, I don't want to deal with you, or I want to mistreat you. No, he first said honor all men. Then the brotherhood came second.
So we flipped that around then.
But then we still don't honor all men. Go ahead.
Verse 18. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the forward.
Now, it's funny how they skipped 17 and they dealt with 18 during slavery.
Yep.
That's why you had the overseer, because they want to make sure he don't read 17.
Right.
We said honor all men. But the slave master wanted to make sure servants be subject to your masters with all fear. But excuse me, master, what about number 7? What about 17?
Well, 17 didn't apply to you. That's why you were called a boy. They would see a grown man, then they call a grown man a boy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, then the word says honor all men. I don't have to honor a boy. So you find out that there's purpose and reasoning behind calling you a boy, because that gives them the ability to walk around the scripture while still believing in their own mind that they're following it.
I'm in good standing.
Right. I just look like this. I'm really not stupid.
Go ahead.
Where we at? Verse 19. For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscience toward Elohim endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it when you be buffeted for your faults, you shall take it patiently. But if, when you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with Elohim. For even hereunto were you called, because the Mashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. Who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judges righteously. Who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sins, should live unto the righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed. For you were as sheep going astray, but are now returned unto the shepherd and bishop of your souls.
And for all you who didn't catch it and understand, it was a tree. Who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree. We take this word cross, which is burdens, and then we put this stick figure or this T and say that's what he died on. it says tree. Let's pick up the jewels when we see the jewels and run with them.
I ain't seen nobody with a gold tree on their neck yet. I ain't get a gold tree, put the diamonds on. I ain't seen that one. I haven't seen that at all. I've seen many crosses though, but I haven't seen a gold tree yet.
All right, let's read the conclusion. Let's go to Malachi chapter 2. Let's go to Malachi chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 1.
Malachi chapter 2 and verse 1. And now, O you priests, this commandment is for you. If you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to heart, to give glory unto my name, says Yahweh of hosts, I will even send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessings. Yea, I have cursed them already, because you do not lay it to heart. Behold, I will corrupt your seed and spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feasts, and one shall take you away with it. And you shall know that I have sent this commandment unto you, that my covenant might be with the Levi, says Yahweh of hosts. My covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me, and was afraid before my name. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity or lawlessness was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. For the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh of hosts.
So this verse started out and says, and now, O you priests, this commandment is for you. Is it not stated that we are to be a kingdom of priests?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even though he ain't talking about Levi, there's that future chastisement in here as well of who he's talking about. Okay, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh of hosts. This is what we're striving to be. But while we're striving for this, we also got to go back and look at the example that was left with us through Yahshua, in whom was found no guile. He was a rebel, but the leaven wasn't there. The hypocrisy wasn't there. Can we figure out how to be a rebel without being a hypocritical rebel? Can we figure out how to rebel against Babylon's system, wisely uplifting Yahweh's system? Go ahead.
Verse 8. But you are departed out of the way. You have caused many to stumble at the law. You have corrupted the covenant of Levi, says Yahweh of hosts. Therefore have I also made you contemptible and base before all the people, according as you have not kept my ways, but have been partial in the law. Have we not all one Father? Have not one Elohim created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother, by profaning the covenant of our fathers? Yehuda have dealt treacherously, and an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Yehuda have profaned the holiness of Yahweh, which he loved, and have married the daughter of a strange god. Yahweh will cut off the man that does this, the master and the scholar, out of the tabernacle of Jacob, and him that offers an offering unto Yahweh of hosts.
Now when he says, and has married the daughter of a strange god, he's not talking about the Ethiopian woman type of marriage that Moshe did. This is doctrine. Go ahead.
Verse 13. And this have you done again, covering the altar of Yahweh with tears, with weeping, and with crying out, insomuch that he regards not the offering anymore, or receives it with goodwill at your hand.
Now, let's go back and touch on that again. Even this daughter, you've married the daughter of a strange god, right? Modern day Christianity is the daughter of what?
Mm-hmm.
Catholicism.
Catholicism.
So you've married the daughter of a strange god.
Mm-hmm.
This is what most of us was raised up in.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter of this strange god. Go ahead.
You know, brother, we forget that Protestants are protesting something against the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was the church. Everything else came out of it. Every other denomination, all of that. So, yeah, we truly missed that part about the daughter, because all of these things were born out of it. Verse 14, yet you say, wherefore? Because Yahweh hath been witness between you and the wife of your youth, because against whom you have dealt treacherously. Yet is she your companion and the wife of your covenant.
The wife of your covenant. You've dealt treacherously with the wife of your youth. Scripture again. You were raised up in this culture. And you've dealt treacherously with this culture. Yet, she is your companion and the wife of your covenant. Was there any covenant in them other religions that you walked in? They said, come as you are. They told you there ain't no law. It's nailed to the cross. There wasn't no covenants there. But this one's been with you, even when you didn't understand it or know it. Reading out of this book, having no understanding. Go ahead.
Verse 15, and did not he make one? Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. For Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, says that he hates putting away. For one covers violence with his garment, says Yahweh of hosts. Therefore take heed to your spirit, that you deal not treacherously. You have wearied Yahweh with your words. Yet you say, wherein have we wearied him? When you say, everyone that does evil is good in the sight of Yahweh, and he delights in them. Or where is the Elohim of judgment?
All right. So once again, he says, take heed to your spirit, that you deal not treacherously. Looking within ourselves, helping one another to see the leaven that we all carry around. Now, when you want to go back to this natural leavening, what is yeast? Yeast is an egg-shaped single-cell fungus that is only visible with a microscope. That's how small it is. That is how small leaven is. Do we need a microscope to see the leaven within us? In order for us to be able to pull it out? But what's even interesting, it takes 20 billion yeast cells to weigh 1 gram. So does that little yeast cell have to keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying and multiplying before we can see it? By the time we see it, everybody else sees it. 20 billion. So then you think about when we do our cleaning and people, well, I got to wipe the walls. 20 billion particles it takes to make 1 gram. So all that stuff is on the wall and you don't see it. I was explaining to a brother, hey man, when you in the kitchen, you using flour, you might see the flour that's in that container. But what you don't see is the flour that went like this. All throughout your house and on the walls. That's why we're wiping down ceilings and walls and floors and the whole nine. Because if you let it sit there, how long is it going to be before you actually see all of those particles? How many years is it going to take before you really, oh man, you know what? Man, there's flour all over this house. No, there's always been leaven all over the house. But we have to deal with the leaven within us too, before it compounds and builds. Starts out as a little microscopical particle that compounds and adds and grows and builds, and then you become puffed up. To grow, yeast cells digest food, and this allows them to obtain energy. And that's what some of us do, let that leavening gain energy. And then you're at this person or you're at that person. It's got to grow in order to gain energy. But if we can kill it before it gets to the point of having energy, then we can deal with each other in a more spiritual and righteous way. By the time it gains energy, then you've offended someone. And now that energy then start another energy over here. And if you go take that energy and don't go directly to that person, but you go to somebody else, now that's gaining energy over here, energy over there, energy over there, when you could have went straight here and stopped that momentum. When baking yeast leaven bread, the yeast ferments the sugars in the flour and release carbon dioxide. What do we let out? We breathe out carbon dioxide. So the more yeast product you got inside of you, full of what? Carbon dioxide. Because the dough is elastic and stretchable, the carbon dioxide cannot escape. They come back to that being dense again, right? You don't want to be stretchable. The expanding gas causes the dough to inflate or rise, becoming puffed up. All right, so let's deal with more of this spiritual leaven. Then we're focused on this natural leaven. That's all we're going to do for today. Everybody remember the Shabbat and keep it holy. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.